Hello friends, in today's video I want to talk you through how I upcycled, decoupaged and decorated this wonderful wooden bowl that I once again stumbled upon in my local charity shop. Please do excuse my voice in this video, I am a little bit under the weather. Don't worry, I'm absolutely fine. I'm not seriously ill, but yeah, I just have a little bit of a cold. So the first thing that I did was prime the bowl. So of course I gave it a good clean, made sure that there's no dirt or dust or any sticky bits or anything like that on it. And then I primed it using Little Birdie's acrylic gesso in white. In case if you wanted to have a look at any of the products that I'm using in this video, I'm going to leave all of the links for them in the description below for you. And if I can't find the exact product, I will link the closest match to it. Once my gesso was dry, I used white chalk paint to further paint the bowl. At this point I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to use for this bowl, what kind of pictures or anything like that, so I decided to add a little bit more white in case if I wanted to do napkins or anything like that. But an extra layer of paint is always handy. It'll help anything else that you want to use stick on better. Once that was dry, I went ahead and I decoupaged the outside of my bowl. So I decided to decoupage only the outside and paint and stencil the inside, as you will see later on. So I used these pictures from Digital Collage Club, so I will link them again in the description below, and I will link the exact pictures that I'm using in this video for you as well. So I downloaded the collage of these little chocolate cupcake cards and I took them to my local print shop and got them printed out on a laser printer. So you could just print them out at home using photo paper. I have a video showing how to work with photo paper when you're decoupaging, but of course, as I always say, the thinner the paper, the easier it is to work with it. So there was 8 images in total, and I wanted to space them out as evenly as I can. There's also 8 images, but they kind of come in pairs of 2, so they don't have the same picture on top of them. But if you look closely, you'll notice that the background is the same. So I tried to match them so that the same background is kind of on the opposite side. So what I did is I took these 2 papers, I wet them with a little bit of water, and then I dry excess water off and apply a layer of decoupage glue onto my bowl. Apply the paper. I use one of these little cloth napkin things to dab the picture down to make sure that there's no air bubbles or any excess glue underneath, and then apply another layer of decoupage glue over the top of it, and then proceed to the next pair. The decoupage glue that I used is Deco Magic Glue by Little Birdie. Once again, I am currently still trialing out their products. I actually really like this glue for their own decoupage papers. However, I did find, because it is quite thin, so it's made more for like rice papers, I guess, and napkins, it's going to be really good to use with those. However, I did find that with the laser printout, as you will be able to see here in the shots that you can see, once I apply the glue, it kind of starts rolling off of the ink. And I had that same problem with watered down Mod Podge. I find the same thing happens if I dip my brush in water prior to taking some Mod Podge on. So when you're working with laser printout, the thicker your glue is, the better it's going to stay on. It did not affect the way that the paper stuck to the bowl itself. It didn't make it any worse or anything like that, but it's just something that I noticed. And so once I've done all 8 images, I left them to dry. Once the images were dry, I started painting the bowl. So the idea that I had in my head was to make like a stripy background. So I've never done stripes before, so I did learn quite a lot, so I just want to share what I learned. So the pattern that I ended up doing was brown, blue, brown in between every picture. And I actually went ahead and I did the blue first, and then the brown sides afterwards. However, in hindsight, I should have really done the brown first, let it dry completely, and then just used masking tape for the middle. It would have made it a lot easier. I didn't do that. Obviously, in future, I will. Right now you can see me do these blue stripes. So this blue paint that you can see me use here is Tuscan Teal by Little Birdie Craft, mixed together with Driftwood, also by Little Birdie Craft, and once again I will link those in the description for you. I thought the Tuscan Teal one is probably going to be just a little bit too bright for the look that I'm going for, so I mixed a little bit of this driftwood into it just to tone it down a little bit, make it a little bit more vintagey. And then I just go ahead and I paint it, and I ended up having to apply 2 coats of it. After applying the second coat, I take the masking tape off straight away so that it doesn't chip. And then, as you can see, I just ended up freehanding the brown stripes, and the brown paint that I'm using is just that driftwood by Little Birdie Crafts as well. And so I ended up also applying 2 coats of this brown paint on the stripes and 2 coats on the bottom of the bowl and on the inside of the bowl as well. So now that the brown paint was fully dry, I go ahead and I apply again the same teal color that I mixed earlier for the teal stripe on the outside of the bowl, but through this floral stencil. This stencil is once again by Little Birdie Crafts. So as you can see, I ended up using it to kind of create a slightly bigger ornament. I used the same stencil twice, kind of mirroring it, and then I used the center flower on its own in the middle to kind of tie it all together. And so I decided to add a little bit of these paint splatters. I just can't go without paint splatters. That's probably one of my most favorite techniques to use in decoupage or in decorating in general. And then I also took a larger natural bristle brush and just kind of dry brushed a little bit of this same teal blue paint on the outside edge of the bowl. And then it was time to add some clay and some mold. Of course, how can I go without clay? So the mold that I'm using is by Redesign with Prima. It's called, I believe it's called Sicilian Borders. Don't quote me on that. Again, if you want to find out a little bit more, then go ahead and check out the links in the description. It's going to be down there. The clay that I'm using is Das air drying clay, and so I went for this kind of column with vines looking border, and so I make one of them, then half it to go either side of my pictures and glue it on using trade grade PVA glue. And I went ahead and I did it on all of the images, so it kind of went 1 mold per picture. I just half it, and this whole thing with apply and molds literally took me the whole evening. After I applied all of the vined molds, I also made some for the top and the bottom of the pictures. I wanted to frame them, and the look that I was going for at this stage was kind of make it look a bit like a cake in itself, as if it's something that's made out of icing or something like that. So that's what I ended up doing. So I ended up using one of the other borders out of the same mold, and I applied them all around the top and the bottom of the bowl. Of course, if you're going to do something like that, when you apply your molds around the bottom, make sure that you try and stand the bowl first, like after you've applied your first mold, and make sure that it's not gonna affect the way that your bowl sits. So then I went ahead and I painted all of the molds. So just using this brown paint actually took me about 2.5 hours, just applying all of that to all of the molds, because I was using one of the smaller brushes to try and be as careful as I can and not get too much paint all on the outside of the molds. The paint that I'm using here is actually my own custom mix, a mix of black and dark brown paint there. And also the white bits that you can see there that have now appeared on the molds. For some reason I can't seem to find the footage of me doing it on my phone anymore, so I don't know what happened there, but the white bits that you can see there, it's just a multi-purpose filler, so I'd used it to fill in some of the gaps that have now appeared after the clay has dried. When you're using this kind of air drying clay, most of them will naturally kind of shrink a little bit as they dry, because they are water based, so as they dry, water will evaporate, and so I used multi-purpose filler to fill in those gaps. So this is what the molds are looking like after I painted them all. And so I go ahead and I dry brush a little bit of white chalk paint all over the top molds, bottom molds, and the stick part of the vine molds. I tried to leave the vines as much as I could, because the plan was for me to then use green wax over the top of the leaves to make them actually look like vines. And whenever you use wax over the top of anything, it always ends up looking better over darker colors. It always shines better and looks a lot more brighter and vibrant when you apply it over a darker paint. The reason why I went for white paint over the top of the mold is because I was kind of going once again for this kind of cakey look, and I was trying to make it look like it is some kind of like either chocolate or icing or something like that, and it has some powdered sugar or something that's been sprinkled over the top of it. And then I take my larger natural bristle brush and Also dry brush a little bit of this white paint over the inside and the bottom of the bowl as well. I also added a little bit of this white dry brush paint over the stripes on the side of the bowl, because at that point they were starting to stand out a little bit too much. They weren't kind of tied in together. So once that was all done, I took my metallic wax. So this once again is a Little Birdie product. So this is metallic wax in Glimmer Moss. Once again, link in the description below, and a tiny brush. So this is literally like a 000 whatever it was. Usually I would just use my finger to apply wax, but I needed to be precise because I was trying to only get the vines with it. That being said, once I had done the vines, I kind of realized that they stood out a little bit too much, and so I took my finger and I did apply a little bit of this same green wax over the top and the bottom mold as well, just so that it wasn't so like in your face. And after I had done all of the waxing, I went ahead and I applied a coat of water-based glossy varnish all over the bowl. So you can see me do the inside, but I did the outside and the bottom as well to prepare it for the next step, which is going to be aging. Once the varnish was dry, the bowl was ready to be aged. So I take a little bit of brown paint. So this is the same brown paint that I used to paint the molds with originally. And I also added a tiny little bit of this copper metallic pigment. I only picked up a little bit on my palette knife, but then when you add it in, it just kind of spread out everywhere. And the reason why I did that is because I just wanted to add a little bit of something extra, a little bit of glimmer into it. You can't really see it, but for me it's all about layering. And so then I take a large brush, I'm just covering the whole thing in this paint, then take a cloth and wipe it all away. It kind of ends up aging everything, so this dark brown paint ends up sticking in little creases, crevices, adding a little bit of shadow, adding a little bit more dimension to the whole thing, and also just glazing everything. So the decoupaged pictures, the molds, everything just kind of gets tinted with the same color. It's almost like adding a filter over your picture. It's that kind of thing. And so once again, I do that to the outside of the bowl, the bottom and the inside of the bowl as well. And so it just kind of ties it all together. So this is what it looks like after aging. As you can see, it's just kind of, it's almost like it's got a filter on it. And so then I went ahead and I added a tiny little bit of white chalk paint over my stick bits, once again, because waxing, aging, everything like that, it kind of dulled them down a little bit. You couldn't really see white anymore. So I just went over them once again. And then I went a bit crazy and added white paint splatters literally everywhere. So I actually started off using chalk paint for that, but then I decided to try out that Little Birdie's chalk acrylic paint, so also the white one, and it actually splattered on a lot nicer. The fact that Little Birdie's acrylic paint is a little bit kind of thinner, it's more like acrylic paint, actually makes the paint splattering a lot easier, and I really feel like that's what tied the whole thing together. Something that is very important if you're doing paint splatters, and in general if you're applying any kind of paint over an already varnished surface, which is what I did when I aged the bowl, is to make sure that you leave your piece before varnishing for as long as possible so that the paint can cure. Because when you go to varnish your piece, the varnish could end up washing away your paint. So then I went ahead and I varnished it. The varnish that I used is heavy duty wood varnish by Polyvine. Once again, the reason why I used it is because it is food safe and I want this bowl to be functional. So I applied 3 coats on the inside and the outside of the bowl. And that, my friends, is the end of the video. There you go. So that is the whole thing. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you learned something new. Maybe I gave you some ideas for how you could decorate a bowl that you already have, especially right now when we're going through this thing where we just can't leave the house for the most part. So we have to get creative and use things in our homes. So yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you found it helpful. Be sure to check out Digital Collage Club for amazing pictures. They have such a great variety of pictures to use for decoupage, card making, scrapbooking, journaling, anything like that. Be sure to check them out. There'll be links for everything, like I said. Quick disclaimer, some of the links, like Little Birdie links, some of the Amazon links are going to be affiliated links, so if you end up purchasing through those, I might get a small commission on those purchases. If you would like to connect with me on social media, there's also also going to be links in the description below for that. If you have any comments, suggestions, anything like that for any future videos, be sure to also leave those in the comments down below. Subscribe to my channel for more videos like this, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!